Straight to our first part of the discussion. Since the announcement of deregulation in the oil and gas sector by the federal government, there has been calls for creation of right atmosphere for investors to show interest in domestic refining of crude oil. What this means for the government is the increase of foreign investments in the oil sector, adequate supply of petroleum products locally, create employment opportunities, and most definitely save and earn foreign exchange through the export of petroleum products. It is, however, expected that when the sector is fully deregulated, with the government-controlled refineries adequately renovated, up and running, a country like Nigeria that is heavily dependent on revenues from oil, the news of an increase in crude oil should be a good one. This is expected to portend more revenues for government to finance basic social amenities for the welfare of the citizens. But now that full deregulation of the sector is now on the way, what impact will this have on the finances of government, especially in the areas of increasing revenues? Well, I have the right person in the house to discuss. He's the professor of economics, Babcock University, and also the former president of the Chartered Institute of Bankers of Nigeria, Professor Segun Ajibola. Thank you very much for your time, Prof. It's good to have you on the show.
Thank you very much, the moderator.
Now, let me start this way, Prof. Let's look at the issue of a subsidy and what's been happening before now. Government is trying to shift away from this, but one way or the other, it keeps coming back with the labor unions and even other agencies, coming up with issues and saying this should be done this way and that way. In your terms, spending more than 10 trillion naira in like 3 years. What do you make of this subsidy regime before we move further into breaking it down, what we could do with these monies?
Well, government has just two options for any commodity, whether essential or non-essential, that is, before its control. It is either government imposes tax or subsidy. The argument about subsidy is usually welfareist in nature. That in an environment where you have poverty ravaging the land, majority unable to provide for the basic necessities of life, government comes in to provide subsidy, especially to help the helpless majority access to these essential commodities. It gets to a point when it becomes a major distortion in the economic framework. It becomes a major, even it could be a waste pipe. But the argument about subsidy will continue so long the majority of the people are unable to provide for themselves the basic necessities of life. So it's a way of propping up the standard of living of people to ensure access to some of those products that are essential in nature when it comes to the consumption pattern of the people. But the problem we have in Nigeria is there are so many distortions, there are so many disconnects here and there, especially in the oil and gas market. We cannot talk about appropriate deregulation if we still have arms and agencies of government holding tight to some segments of that market, like NNPC is doing. We cannot talk of full deregulation when our lives depend on imported products, whereas we have the wherewithal to produce in Nigeria, to convert crude to finished products, to encourage investment in the oil and gas industry, either locally or from abroad. And we don't have policies, we don't have programs, we don't have templates, we don't have blueprints, either to revive the moribund refineries or to encourage investment into new refineries. I think we have only seen one, or to even go into either concessions or full privatization of the existing refineries, or to even define the role of NNPC in the entire architecture of oil and gas industry in Nigeria. Unless and until we fix all these disconnects, we have problem defining where exactly we are headed to in oil and gas. And the issue of the issue of subsidy will continue to come back. We are talking about what's the impact of subsidy on government finances. Yeah, it shows a sizable, a significant proportion of government revenue. Funds that should be diverted to other segments of the economy to create some multiplier effects, help the economy to grow and develop, we concentrate on subsidy. But the subsidy itself, we should ask ourselves, why should we annex price of petroleum products to the happening in the global oil market? Whenever the price of crude goes up,
we are in trouble.
Price of local products
goes up.
All the prices go up. In fact, asking sarcastically, should Nigerians be praying for crashing price of crude?
Price of crude?
So that price of local products will not go up?
No go up.
Is that not an aberration? Is that not funny? Is that ethically and morally right to say Nigeria should be on their knee praying that the price of crude oil should not go up, so that local prices of refined products will not go up? That's the kind of disconnect we have in our environment today. Increasing the price of crude in the global market should be sharing news to Nigerians, because we have more of petrodollar. And when there is monetization of petrodollar to our local currency, we should have more money to spend, either on capital projects or any other form of spending, so that at the end of the day, the economy will benefit from increase in the price of crude at the global market. But what we hear today is whenever there is increase in the price of crude, it's annexed to the price of petroleum products locally, especially PMS, petrol, and Nigerians will be worse for it. That increase, that extra revenue that is coming via increase in the price of crude, where is it?
Now, let me follow up with the fact that looking at what is on ground now at the moment, clearly subsidy is not, there's no provision for subsidy in the budget. And at the moment, we saw in the news yesterday, it was in the newspapers, it was online and everywhere, that at the moment the country is going to spend more than 102.9 billion naira this month to subsidize. So what is going to happen? Where are we going to get these differentials from? How does government bridge this gap? Because the discussions with Labour is still pending.
Well, I have problem with that question. My problem is, what's our benchmark for the budget, for 2021 budget? $40 per barrel. What's the price of crude in the international market today? Over 60. So where's the extra? So there's match funding, sort of, whether we admit it or not. We have extra earnings from crude. We have increase in price of refined products that we import. So is government saying that that extra earning from crude is now being applied to offset the subsidy that was never prepared, was never budgeted for? So this rigmarole will continue until we come back home and we sit down and ask ourselves, what do we do with our refineries? We have no reason to depend on imported refined products in Nigeria. We have no reason. Let's make our refineries work and go to the next level in terms of our economic discourse. It's a major distraction to economic planning in Nigeria that we concentrate so much attention We divert so much resources. We argue so much about what is happening to the price of crude in the international market, what is happening to the increase in the price of imported refinery products from outside Nigeria, and we sit down. Our refineries are moribund. We import what we should have locally, because the template, the architecture for converting crude to refined products for local consumption is in comatose. I think if we fix that, in fact, by not fixing it, we are helping other economies
to grow,
to benefit.
Yes, to benefit
from what should be the positive multiplier effect of a functioning, a functioning oil and gas sector, functional refineries. We are losing everything. We are losing all the benefits that should bring to us in terms of even propping up other economies that are tied to the oil and gas sector, in terms of generating employment, in terms of even improving on our overall economic activities through increase in GDP. We are benefiting other sectors. We are benefiting other economies of the world, because that template is in a disoriented form.
Now, I like to follow up on the issue of refining. Prof, let's look at refining critically. It is capital intensive, and everybody knows that it is capital intensive. I think that's where the PIB also comes up, because all of this will open up this market and, of course, attract investment into this market. Just like the Dangote refinery that most people talk about at the moment, it's not easy. We know how many years this has been on, and a lot of funding even from the CBN. What role do you see PIB playing in all of this, also attracting investments in this sector? Because refining is capital intensive.
Yes, it's capital intensive, but nobody has argued that it's a loss-making business. So it's capital intensive. If we get the template right, even the payback period will be taken care of, no matter the magnitude of the investment, because it's an essential commodity. It's something we need to consume locally. It's something we can export to the rest of the world.
Yes.
African countries in particular. So whoever invests in that industry will reap the benefits. It will turn to a profit-making venture, however long, and it can't be too long. And I believe there are investors from all over the world that will be willing to go there. If government doesn't want to let go, can we even consider PPP, public-private partnership, in this segment? You know, from the days of the classical economists, the argument has always been there. Should government have any business being in business? And that argument is there because of problem of accountability, problem of mismanagement, problem of corruption. What belongs to everybody belongs to nobody. But if you have a element of private sector approach to that kind of investment, sense of accountability will improve. So we need major paradigm shifts in the way we approach investment in the oil and gas industry. So whether it's capital intensive or not, it is capital intensive. Whatever is the extent of that capital intensity, there will be international investors if you open up. As of today, we are talking of a deregulation. Which deregulation? When NNPC still holds. Why is even the importation we are talking about, why is that importation not deregulated? Why is NNPC an operator and the regulator? You can't approbate and reprobate at the same time. There has been inefficiency. And that is what we are witnessing in this country. So we need to correct certain templates, even while we are still an importing nation. But solution to it is to shift. If we don't have the capital that is intensive, let's invite international investors into our refineries. If government doesn't want to let go from day one, for whatever reason, national security, perhaps inclusive, then let's go into PPP, public-private partnership, as far as our refineries are concerned, and even other petrochemical industries. Let's go into that. If I digress a bit, why should Ajaokuta still remain an uncompleted venture 40 years after? If we don't have the wherewithal to run this kind of industries, including our refineries, let's own up. Let's seek help. Let's make them work. The life of an average in Nigeria, the life of the man on the street would be better for it, rather than crying every time over the price of petroleum products.
It's really getting very, very interesting. But I also see the issue of trust here, where as Nigerians, we also need the issue of trust with government. I think there's a level of trust deficit that everybody is now so scared that even if they allow government to fully deregulate, because one way or the other, Nigerians have a role to play in supporting government to fully deregulate. That is one thing that is key in all of this. So how do you think this trust deficit can be bridged? And talking about also funding and all of that, and we also see government looking at selling some assets. How does that come to you?
Well, maybe let me take it from the last comment. Yes, selling some assets. Well, asset stripping at times may be a way out if the assets are underperforming, because government hold on certain assets may be to the detriment of the economy as a whole. If you hold on to assets that are not giving you any reasonable returns, then you ask yourself, of what use is government hold on such assets? An option may be to strip those assets and divert the proceeds to something more beneficial with better returns to the economy as a whole. Then overall, the economy will have benefited from such a decision. So if government could identify those assets, either they are underperforming or they are not performing at all, or they are even moribund, take a typical agency of government today and ask yourself, if in Lagos here we look at Federal Secretariat Ikoyi, or what use has it been in the last 30-40 years? That's a good example. And some others all over. Take C9 posts that you want to take as an example. Look at all abandoned post offices all over the country. What's SNIPE posts to do under a new strategy, under a new management, capable management that is in SNIPE posts now? How will government approach that? Take honor, is it Nigeria Port Authority or any other one? There are assets all over owned by government that are either there as abandoned, not useful, and some of them are in solid state. That's landed properties. There are so many others, even outside Nigeria. So what are we doing with those assets? Can't we convert? Can't we dispose and apply the proceeds to things that are more productive, more beneficial to Nigerian state? These are the issues. So if we can identify those assets, that would be the best option for the government. That would be the best option for Nigeria as a country. That would be the best option for Nigerians as a people. So I don't see anything that is extraordinary in that. The second issue there?
Yes, the second issue is trust deficit. Nigerians and the government.
You see, it has always been there. And one of the key characteristics of developing economies is the instability in governance. Not in government now, in governance. We are going through this policy today. Tomorrow, we wake up and reverse ourselves for no reason. So, if I'm coming, and that affects private investment inflow into the country, what we call foreign direct investment, because if I'm coming with this magnitude of investment, and I am not sure of what government pronouncement could be within the next 24 hours, then as a reasonable investor, I have to check myself. And locally too, if I'm taking an interest in a particular sector of the economy, and I don't know if government support that is promised today, and so many of such pronouncements, so many of such incentives have been rolled out, how many of them, in actual fact, have been actualized? So if I'm not sure, and I'm basing my decision on what government is saying today, but I'm not sure what that government can say tomorrow, then there's that trust deficit. Those are areas we need to correct. You know, for your international investors, they go by way of MOUs, and MOU at times turn to agreement, and they are sure that they are well protected, and there are clauses that will protect them in case government decides to do otherwise, arbitration clauses and so on and so forth. So government needs to up the stake. Government needs to up the ante and be sure that whenever we involve third parties, especially from outside the country, we are predictable as a people. The government is predictable as an institution. Today, we cannot say that we've earned that kind of accolades from across the globe. It's not only in Nigeria. So many countries of the world, especially developing nations of the world, have that problem of trust deficit. So we need to do something about that so that we are sure those we are partnering with of a stability. We are sure, of a stability, we assure them there will be no policy, no policy instability for no reason. And if we have reason, then there must be compensation, there must be way of remedy the pains that may be occasioned by such shift in agreement.
It's a good way to leave it, Prof. It's always nice talking to you, Professor Segun Ajibola, there, former president CIBN, and is also a professor of economics at Babcock University. Thank you so much for spending your afternoon with us. Despite the traffic in Lagos, we appreciate this. Thank you
very much.
All right.